Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on improving engineering performance, reducing stress with AI-driven log analytics. I'm Michael Riordan, and I'm a product marketing manager at Sumo Logic. And today I'll be joined by Manoj Sharma, product manager at Sumo Logic, and Rachel Stevens, an analyst at RedMonk. And I'm super excited for us to kickstart today's conversation. As a bit of a introduction, wanted to cover what we'll discuss today. One, the challenges of having the right data to get the best insights. Two, why log analytics that leverages automation is essential for fast troubleshooting. And three, how automation can help reduce stress and improve overall engineering performance. So to set the stage, we'll cover some observability observations for 2024 before we dive into our conversation. And namely, we see a few trends going on related to engineering efficiency. One, meeting reliability targets is a key metric of success for SRE teams and is reflected in operational performance. And that means higher operational performance results in lower burnout, better productivity, and overall better job satisfaction. Improved operational efficiencies top the list of ways in which reliability engineering practices add business value. Three, AI won't replace manual troubleshooting, but will instead complement manual troubleshooting. It'll help you be faster at sifting through all the noise and all the available data to recommend where to focus and in what order to find any issue. Four, complexity will continue to drive up MTTR, so look for observability solutions that use AI and ML to troubleshoot faster. And last but not least, the industry has become more aware of its needs to address developer burnout and create a better work-life balance for technical and reliability teams. So in light of all this, let's get into the discussion. So Rachel, we know, that companies today are software-driven regardless of industry, which means engineering teams must perform. So from your wider perspective, I guess, what are some of the challenges getting in the way of engineering teams performing at an elite level?
Yeah, so I think one of the stories is kind of the age-old story of complexity in our environments. And the state of our environments over the past years has just gotten so hard for any one person to wrap their head around. Our environments are heterogeneous. We have things living in a mix of cloud and on-prem and SaaS services. Our environments are increasingly distributed, which can add to the complexity of figuring out what is running where and where things are interacting with one another. And the other thing is that our applications are composed of both first-party and third-party services. So some of it that we're writing, some of it that we're pulling in. And you may or may not have access to all of the systems that your code is running on or depending on. And so that can make it tricky to troubleshoot. And all of this together means that it's really hard to model the system in general, but especially in our heads, which means that we have to rely on the tooling around us to help us understand what's going on. And so the hard part of debugging in this world is that when we're trying to track down where the error is occurring in the first place, that's a tricky thing. And then having the correct context on top of that at the right time so that we can understand what's happening in our tools and our systems. Logs are one of the tools that helps us do that. And then there's an emerging class of tools that is coming in around that, in and around AI and ML. So all of these things together, that's the story that we've been telling for a lot of years in this industry, is things are increasingly complex and hard to handle. The problem that's kind of emerged more recently in the past year or so is a lot of tech companies are now facing this challenge in a world of budget contractions. And cost is an increasing concern for a lot of constituencies in and around the enterprise. And so in a lot of cases, we're asking these teams to do these challenging things with fewer resources. Sometimes it's augmented by the AI ML and in these best case scenarios. In other cases, we're just flat out asking teams to do more with less, which is a little bit harder. And in other cases, we're looking at teams that are trying to consolidate their tooling or increase the value that they have from their existing tools. So that can look like having, if you have an existing tool or an existing data set that's already there, is there another team or another use case that can leverage that same data rather than trying to replicate it somewhere else? So can we piggyback off of the tools that we already have? So one of the examples that we see is like an observability data set and a security data set sometimes have a lot of overlapping needs. So can both of those teams then leverage the same data set? So those are some of the challenges that we see. This is the complexity, we're seeing cost, and all of these things kind of add up together to making it really challenging for everybody to figure out how to do their best work.
Nice. So, Manas, you work with engineers every day. Are you kind of hearing the same challenges that Rachel just described um, within our own teams at Sumo Logic?
Oh, yes. Thanks. Firstly, thanks for having me. And yeah, to answer your question, absolutely, right? As we are on an everyday basis, as I work with the engineers in my team and with the extended team, some of the challenges these guys have to deal with is, again, right, over the course of evolution, not just at Sumo, but at other companies as well, you see, the SaaS architecture or the technology stack has evolved from monolithic to microservices, and now with the front end architecture. What this results in is, growing complexity within the code, but it is all being done with a purpose towards ensuring flexibility and scalability of the service to customers. So, with that being paramount, engineers have to, one, deal with complexity, like what Rachel also called out. Two, from the perspective of cost consciousness, now I see engineers are actually looking more minutely in terms of the costs. Again, right, with all of the pressures, there is a more added focus in terms of cost being top of mind as they design solutions, as they pick tools, as they pick any of these components within the software stack. And it just doesn't reflect only in the components, but it also extends to the tool chains or the vendors that we as a team, as well as the engineers, look to adopt. So again, right, that theme of cost consciousness is also echoed within the engineer community. And then lastly, I think more and more we are also seeing the phenomenon that the same engineer is having to deal not just with the observability aspects of their product, but they're also having to manage security and compliance. So in a sense, we are also seeing the worlds are converging, both with the observability and security. And so if you look at it from the perspective of a developer or an engineer, while he still has to go out and write out the business impacting code and take care of business as usual, he still needs to worry about managing that added complexity that is coming about. Two, he still needs to be cost aware, cost conscious, as well as then he also needs to take care of both security and compliance, and hence the reliance grows on a tool to basically take care of all of those needs. Internally at Sumo, all of the engineers, like we use Sumo on Sumo, so from that perspective, all of the capabilities at Sumo very nicely lend into all of the requirements that are growing, not just within us and our organization, but we see this reflection growing across many other customers as well.
Yeah, I love your comment on the shifting left of security and things like that into the development space, which is a great thing, and because we can address these concerns earlier into in the SDLC, which is great. It makes it more efficient. It makes it so we're building better, stronger apps. But if you're trying to do that without tooling, that really, like when we're talking about challenges to engineering performance, it's asking developers to take on a lot. And so the developers need supportive tooling in order to be able to actually shift things left. We can't just throw things at the development team. It has to be something that is a supported and conscious effort.
Exactly.
So let's dive into the troubleshooting challenge that engineering teams are facing a bit more. Rachel, from your market view, what are engineering teams running into that slows down troubleshooting, causing longer MTTR, putting more pressure on them to find and fix problems?
Yeah. So I think one of the problems in this complex world that we're talking about in troubleshooting is, one, just pinpointing what the issue is. And to get there, there's a lot of signal to noise problem. We have complex systems. You have to figure out kind of what is actually causing what. And sometimes this happens when one system goes down, there can be cascading failures elsewhere. So you have these alert storms that have happened. And so you have to figure out exactly where the issue is. And specifically in the context of logs, there's a balance that has to happen in the verbosity of the logs to find kind of the right information with the right context without totally drowning in over information, and kind of getting that signal to noise right. Because volume is our friend in that it can provide a lot of context, context that metrics cannot provide a lot of times. Like metrics can help bubble up the right information so you can kind of start to pinpoint the right thing, but metrics a lot of times do not provide that context. That context would come from a log. And so metrics can help kind of monitor and point you in the right direction to troubleshoot, but it's the logs that have the context. But that log, sometimes you kind of drown in that like too much of a good thing. It's like too much context can actually make it really challenging. So you have to find that needle in the haystack, and that can be complicated. That can get expensive, and usually it involves regex, which is always a little bit challenging. So you have to find that right line between providing the relevant information without drowning in information. And I think that's one of the things that's really challenging in that toil and frustration, specifically around troubleshooting and logs.
Great. So let's discuss how to reduce the toil. What can be implemented to reduce the toil, reduce the frustration? What technologies and practices are being sought out or implemented to drive greater efficiency, to increase productivity and innovation velocity?
You want me to take that one?
Yes, let's start with you.
Perfect. Yeah, so I think there's a lot happening right now. It's an exciting time in our industry because I think we have a lot of people who are experimenting with new tools, especially in and around AI and ML, to try to help us provide that context. I think we're still very much in a place where we need human in the loop and complementary tools. So it's not something where we are necessarily outsourcing all of our knowledge into these tooling, but we can really help it so that these tools can increase our efficiency and our effectiveness in trying to figure out what the thing is. I think a lot of the things that we're seeing in terms of kind of that role of human and machine and thinking about what gets automated and how can be things like, what can machines do really well? So like, if we're having one of those alert storms, so to say, is there better correlation that we can do to suppress the alert storm, because we can correlate events into one thing, and so we're not absolutely overwhelming these teams in information, but we can kind of say, like, here's an issue and these are all related issues. Can we provide the right context in the moment for people so that we can figure out what's happened before, or what are related events, or what are the best practices in and around things? Can we help people sift through these large amounts of data? And I think one of the things that's really great about this, and the thing that in an ideal world we can get to, is we can start to democratize some of the expertise that comes with troubleshooting, that kind of comes over the years of experience of having just seen things that go wrong. It's like you start to, as someone who's seen it, understand some of the common patterns, some of the things that have happened that you've seen in the past, and you can get to a place where you as a human can kind of navigate the system. With this tooling, I'm hopeful that we can get to a place where we can level up entire teams to have some more of that level of expertise in a way where we have made it so that everybody can be better at troubleshooting and understanding what's happening in their systems.
In Manas, does that resonate with what you've heard from our customers, and are they pushing us to add more automation, more AI, in order to help them be faster at troubleshooting? And can you show us kind of any functionality within our platform that we've recently built that kind of was inspired by that feedback?
Absolutely. Happy to show some demo, but before I get there, I specifically want to talk to a customer example, right? That particular comment, Rachel, from you in terms of how do we ensure we reduce the noise and highlight the signal. I want to take this specific customer example, right? This was a new customer. As they came on board, obviously they went through the process of setting up their alerts for their microservices. And what that resulted in was a bunch of low, medium, and high priority alerts. Now, for each one of them, they had their own playbooks, but very quickly, the administrator from the customer side turned around and said, look, while having the capability to configure all of the alerts is beautiful, but this is actually creating a lot of noise within the system. It's increasing the toil for for all of our users. And now a lot of them are hit with what is called the alert storm, or being woken up in the middle of the night, having to handle alerts. And as you and in some of the scenarios, these are low priority alerts. We do understand, but from our bandwidth challenges, we know we're not going to take care of this. So how do we kind of suppress this noise, and how do I try to set this as a baseline and then go forward from here? And can Sumo and the system help me alert if there are anomalies around this, right? Basically, set my current system as the baseline, because internally for resourcing or other challenges, I have planned it out from my backlog in terms of implementing it, but I do not want to take care of it, and I do not want to burden my operations team. And from that perspective, a tool is not just trying to provide an alerting capability, but continue to help the customer in their journey as they evolve both their services, as well as provide more flexibility to the customers. And based on those conversations, we came up with what we are calling as smart alerts. So if I can jump onto the screen, our monitoring capabilities have been there for close to a year and a half or 2 years, right? They've been in preview beta for close to 2 years. We found a lot of success. Customers loved it, and then subsequently it was made generally available. And so using these monitors, you can really create alerts based on your interest, either around metrics, logs, whatever be it, right? With either a static or an anomaly detection. And this will help you create alerting capabilities across your services. However, as I said, this results in some of those alert storms. And so what we have recently introduced is this smart alert capability, where users can, using an anomaly detection method for their particular data, set up baselines and clearly call out whether they would like an anomaly detection either on the upside or on the downside or on both sides, as in, look at it from the perspective of the current state and state of alerts within the system as the baseline. And going forward, have a way of identifying that, okay, this anomaly was breached on the upside or the downside, and use that as an alert mechanism. And once those alerts are fired, you can obviously, based on the configuration here, and as we had set up in this demo, you can obviously drive it into your notification tool of choice. Internally, we have driven it into Slack. And from Slack, you would get all of the alerts that would help you quickly pinpoint to this particular root cause. I will quickly showcase in the context of one alert, where I will just quickly reshare my screen with the smart alert over here. And as you can notice here, this was an alert that was recently detected for one of our demo applications. And as part of the demo application, as you can see, this is like the baseline state of alert within the system, but the system only alerted when there was an anomaly detected on top of it. And this is primarily from a use case perspective. And as all of you might be familiar with my reference to the baseline models and so on, all of this is more easily achieved with the ML and AI technologies. So from a customer perspective as well, the feedback from them to us is, look, we would like for Sumo to be able to help us, again, reduce toil, take care of some of these challenges using these sort of technology advancements, right? And so this is one of the key functionalities that we've recently rolled out in the past month, that I specifically wanted to highlight because it echoed so well with Rachel, what you called out.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the smart alerts, some of that kind of looks just like having a different threshold in terms of this. But what you're saying is, this is not that I have set a higher threshold. What you're saying is that it has detected a baseline level of variance, and then it's detected an anomaly, and the system has kind of figured that out. Is that, am I understanding that right?
Absolutely right. Because
Okay.
And I will, for a moment, just switch screens back into the configuration there, right? That I was earlier showcasing. And this will make it amply clear, right? Here, with this particular configuration, what we are calling out is the capability within the system to automatically create that baseline as well as detect any anomalies both up and down. In this particular scenario, we have been able to detect up anomalies, but assuming in an ideal scenario, there could be some down anomalies as well, the system would be able to surface that. You still do, with the monitor's capability, have the ability to configure static alerts. So you can very well say, hey, I want this logs alert, I want the anomaly alert, and within this anomaly alert, I want to still have anomaly detection up and down. And here I am going to choose a very static definition for how my alert is going to be triggered. As in, if there are 2 or 3 of these alerts fired and the fourth one fires, help me, notify or call out an alert. So just to kind of summarize, with the monitor's configuration, there is a lot of flexibility. You can define static thresholds as well, anomaly thresholds. And two, with what I highlighted earlier, you can also configure system identified or more ML driven anomalies.
Very cool. Thank you.
Back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Manas. So let's dive into some other factors to consider. Are there any interesting practices, Rachel, that you find emerging that can help engineers become more efficient at monitoring and troubleshooting performance issues?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that happens a lot in these conversations, we talk about like centralizing your log data. So like if you have a log management tool that you centralize and you can enrich all of your data in the same place, you can kind of manage sensitive data in a consistent way. All of those are great things. And it's a common kind of, if we're talking about logs specifically, it is a trend that people will talk about. But I think that trend ties into a bigger trend that we are seeing in the industry at large. And like platform engineering is definitely like one of the trends du jour in terms of trying to drive simplicity into our engineering organizations. And I think one of the things that we've seen in and around like the DevOps ethos is that if you build it, you run it, which is great in principle. But when we kind of talked about the growing complexity of our systems at the top of this webinar, it's really hard to do that because our systems are so complex and it's hard to hold all of these things in our head. And so one of the things that we've seen emerging is, can we offload some of this overhead from our individual app dev teams into a centralized platform? So we're seeing that with things like security or authentication, observability, CI/CD. Like, can we take some of these kind of core pieces of what it means to actually deploy and run an application in prod and bring them into a centralized place so that each individual app dev team can kind of use those scaffolding pieces in their applications and then focus on the parts of their apps that drive unique value for their individual projects. And so I think if you think about logs in that context, it's like, what can we do to centralize and take some of the pressure off the individual teams and make it so that it's easy for everybody to do logging and observability well? And so I think that's part of the trend that we're seeing in terms of how is it that we can have an interesting emerging practice. And it looks different in different organizations. Sometimes it looks like DevOps, sometimes it looks like SRE, sometimes it's called platform engineering. It looks different in a lot of different places, but I think that that's one of the trends to watch. And then as we've talked throughout this entire thing is the role of AI and ML in what we're building. I think there's a lot of conversations that are happening right now about the best way to get value from AI ML. And I don't think that there's a consistent answer there at all yet. And I think there's still a lot of questions. It's like some people are, is there an optimal foundation model? Like, do I need to enhance an LLM with a RAG model? Is it actually small data models? Where does all of this actually need to run? And what are the cost and performance implications and privacy and security implications of all of this? These are all really open questions, and it's a quickly evolving space. But again, these are all factors that people need to be thinking about in terms of emerging practices that are definitely going to be incorporated into how we are building applications going forward.
In Manas, kind of piggybacking off of that, how have these trends, the centralizing of the log data, democratizing access to the data, trying to unlock insights more readily and easily from the data, affected what we're building? Has it fit into your product plans when it comes to expanding our overall log analytics platform and what we're hearing from customers?
This has heavily influenced our roadmap. I think some of the features that we might roll out over the course of the next few quarters will kind of lend credence to it. But if I can talk in specific to a couple of scenarios, right? One specifically around event analytics and everything that we've been hearing from customers around both monitoring and troubleshooting issues. A lot of our customers use events as a way for their users to be able to gain context around any incident or any particular large event happening within their system, right? And today, again, with events, it is burdened with a lot of volume, which creates a lot of noise, and really users have to be sifting through it. So from our perspective, what we are trying to look at providing with events is one, help with as much auto detection of events as possible, so that to users it is a clean bring your data in, or in some cases we already do know that users are bringing in that data, so we auto identify some of those log signatures that are of events of interest to users and just surface them as events of interest and show them in their troubleshooting journey, be it when they search a query, be it in the context of an alert, be it in the context of a dashboard visualization they have. Basically be able to light up and show an event overlay for customers, so that and users, so that as engineers are looking at troubleshooting a particular scenario, they do not have to jump context, go through the various notification tools, talk to various engineers and understand all the different contexts. They can very quickly get the events of interest within the same view, right? And as part of this, while we have been reaching out to a few customers as part of our preview, some of the feedback we've heard is, and actually some of the understanding we've had is, each one of the customers has different stack. So there's not one common set of events that all the customers are using across the board. And some of them have very custom events in some cases, from a feature flag perspective or from a configuration perspective, whereas some of them rely on some tools. And so what a lot of customers have come back to us and said is, look, we are happy to contribute in terms of building out this event database, so that a user within their org configures it once, and then it automatically lights up contextually in every engineer's troubleshooting journey, right? So it literally is, somebody sources all the events of interest, configures it, and then every other user within the organization benefits from it. And as there are newer events of interest, they can obviously configure it, right? But the point being, from a platform engineering perspective, a lot of that is taking shape, because some of our initial understanding was, look, we are going to take our time in terms of lighting up all of these events out of the box, because we'll take our time in terms of identifying. But we see a lot of these partnership with customers coming in, where customers are happy to shorten the time cycle, drive value, and say, look, I'm happy to configure this because today I really don't have any tool. I am having my users jump across. And to the point that we were talking earlier, there's a lot of toil for engineers, right? So this is one of those aspects that again can help users in terms of reducing the toil. The other aspect that we continue to hear from a platform engineering perspective is cost management. Again, right? I think, as I said earlier, cost is a key theme. Engineers are worried about it. It bubbles down to an engineer level where they have to bring it into their vision. How I'm charging? How does the platform charge? What do I need to take care of? And so administrators are aware of this, again, added burden, right? They want the engineers to just focus on the business functionality that they are driving. And hence, what administrators are saying is, look, we are happy to configure guardrails or cost quotas across our system, because then I literally take out any sort of cost awareness from a user's perspective, and just give him guardrails around which they can go ahead and do their activities, right? And again, that is another key aspect that we are looking to drive through from a roadmap perspective in this year. And one key aspect that I'd like to highlight, again, just to take away all of the challenges for customers from a cost perspective, is one of our rollouts with the flex pricing, where while our data tiers work beautifully well for customers in terms of bringing in all of their data, even though their data was growing exponentially. But obviously, there were some compromises with experience and functionality that customers had to get into. Now with flex pricing, which literally is $0 in, just bring as much data as you want, and then only pay for the analytics value that you're driving from the data, customers and in turn engineers are freed from that burden of actually having to worry how much data they're generating, how do they smartly generate, store some partial data in this particular tool and keep the rest in S3, which they will pull in on a need basis. All of that gets taken out from their challenge, from their toil. And hence with this pricing as well, we feel, and it has already been launched out earlier this month, we feel very confident that it helps, it actually starts delivering in terms of helping engineers reduce their toil as well as be more efficient with the troubleshooting.
Agreed. I have been super excited about what the team's building, and was super excited when the Flex announcement was made, because I really think it flips the model on its head and helps democratize kind of access to the data, and makes folks not think in terms of ingest and what data they're bringing in. Just bring in everything and go from there.
Correct.
Great. Well, I think that's time for today. Rachel, Manas, thanks for joining. Any final parting thoughts?
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me. This is a great conversation, and I am excited to watch all the things on your roadmap. Manas, that all sounded really exciting.
And thank you, Rachel, for all of the industry feedback. I think that was very useful and good validation in terms of the direction that we are heading towards as well. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Manas, and thank you all today for joining us. I hope you have a great day.